Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Today I'm going to be discussing with you how the world has changed, how it is continuing to change, how that might play into some misconceptions that you and people around you have, and therefore maybe lead you in some directions that are false, and therefore what to do about it. So it's going to be fun. We're going to talk about some examples from some people I was talking to recently. And so before we dive in, if you haven't already, please nail the subscribe button, smash the notification bell, hit that little all notifications thing. Really appreciate your support, appreciate your help growing this channel. We try to produce great content every single day, so go back and check out some of the other videos. And if you would like help at all with the subjects of international structuring for yourself or your business, please reach out to me. You can book a call at calendly.com/Michael-Rosmer, link in the description below, or you can check out our websites, offshorecitizen.net, offshorecapitalist.com, and send us a message through there. Okay, so I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and one of the things that came up, and I've noticed this in a number of cases, is they were talking to somebody near them who had what I would call not updated information. And I think that this is probably especially true for people who, well, it's especially true because of the education system. It's especially true with the case of people who have maybe come from somewhere else a number of decades ago. And it fundamentally is the idea that our view of the world is shaped by the past rather than by the present. And this can be very misguided. So I'm going to give you some examples. If you were to say, hey, listen, what is Malaysia like? Well, if the last time you were in Malaysia was in the 1990s, your view of Kuala Lumpur would probably be fairly primitive. If, on the other hand, you were to fast forward to the present, if you were to go to KLCC, right around the Petronas Towers, etc., I mean, this beautiful cosmopolitan Singapore-like city, very urban, everything works, it's clean, etc. If you were to think about Bulgaria and your experience was there in the 90s, it was super dangerous, right? If you go there today, it's, for the most part, it's safer than Canada. And so we've got these misconceptions of the world that come from an old worldview. If you read the book Factfulness, which I recommended in a previous video I did a few days ago, he talks about some examples of this, about what he calls the myth of the gap, and how we have this idea of the gap between the developed and the developing world and things like this, and how it's largely not true anymore, actually, by most metrics. And so why is this important? Well, if you talk to somebody and you're interested in, say, relocating abroad, or something else, they may have an idea that, oh, hey, this country here is the best and this other place is a dump. And largely that's untrue, or it's not necessarily untrue. It's that you should be really careful about updating that belief. I'll give you some examples. I'm here in Dubai right now. And so Dubai, go and go online. I challenge you to do this. It's actually a fun experiment. Go online and look up pictures of Dubai from 1990. You're going to see it's basically like a dirt road. Like there's basically nothing there. And then compare it to pictures in 2020. And you're talking about one of the top world-class cities in the world, right? That's 30 years of change. Not a long time, but a massive, massive change. Another example is you can go and do the same thing with Shanghai. Go get a picture of Shanghai from 1990 and compare it to a picture today. It's crazy to see the difference, like insane. And a lot of the world has changed in this way. Even if you think about something like, one of the things that I kind of hear as a common misconception about Dubai is kind of ideas of strict rules and the religious influence and stuff like this. And that might have been true 10, 15, 20 years ago. But every year it's less and less true at a pretty alarming rate, such that you really don't notice much at all. Aside from, a really multicultural city that, has a large Islamic population. Great, So I think this is super important, is in general, to keep updating our beliefs. And this is one of the reasons I really encourage people to travel. Like, before thinking about moving, before about anything else, if you're concerned, if you're wondering, etc., try going and traveling. You can also think about this in terms of structuring, right? It used to be, if you were to go back 5 years, I still have some people who contact me and say, hey, like I'm thinking about setting up a Seychelles or a BVI or Belize or whatever structure. It's like, yeah, that was good in like 2010, And today, it's typically not very good. It's not usually a very great solution for almost anybody, okay? So again, it's an example of updating our beliefs. Like, the world is changing. I once heard the expression that we're outdated machines, right? Which is basically the idea that we respond to our environment and we've adapted to the previous environment. As the environment changes, we have to then change, but we're lagging the changes in the environment. And I think this is very true. So you may find yourself in some situations where people give you advice, people have certain perceptions of the world, etc. And my question would always be, how up to date is that information? Even your own worldviews. I can tell you, I certainly had distorted views about what different parts of the world were like prior to traveling there. But even beyond that is, again, just the rate of change in places, right? You could say, okay, listen, the first time I went to Prague was cheap, right? Today, Prague, at least real estate, not cheap, right? It's actually more expensive than, parts of Paris to some extent, right? You can go and you can say, hey, listen, I first went to Thailand and it was like this, and now it's different, right? So all of this is evolving at a tremendous pace. And I think that when we're stuck within our little bubble, we are insulated from what that is. And we're making judgments about the past. I'll give you one last example, which I think is super relevant to kind of the trajectory of the world today. And that is, in my view, what probably happened in maybe like the early to mid 2000s was Silicon Valley companies tried to do distributed teams, okay? And I remember distinctly watching an interview with the founder of WordPress, talking about meeting with Mark Andreessen, the founder of Andreessen Horowitz, very famous venture capitalist. And he was really grilling, Mark Andreessen was grilling him and saying, hey, listen, because WordPress had a distributed team around the world, right? Remote workers. He said, what do you know that these guys at Facebook and these other places don't know? And I think something that people failed to appreciate is that the tools changed. So if you tried to do distributed teams in the early to mid 2000s, for sure, prior to the iPhone, for sure, but really prior to good broadband, good, at least 3G, but really 4G, etc., you were probably sitting there saying, hey, listen, you know what? This is not such a great experience. But today we have Zoom. Today we have instant messaging. Today we have free voice calls. Today we have great internet connections. Today we have the ability to do most of our work from our cell phones, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And as that's happened, it's created a real opportunity for people to work from anywhere. And it's really interesting to me when you start challenging your beliefs and saying, what can I do differently? And all of a sudden updating that and discovering, oh, wow, a lot of these things that people tell you are, this is the way that it is, you discover it's not the case. So anyway, I wanted to kind of dive into that just because I think it's something that I've heard people kind of coming to the table with wrong assumptions, or maybe even more commonly, being in a social circle of people who are maybe applying views to them that come from outdated assumptions. And I think it's worth it to challenge those and say, hey, listen, what's updated? And for us, it's really, really, really important, if we want to be most effective in the world, most effective at deciding what to do, where to go, etc., to get updated beliefs. So very, very important. I hope that helps. If you have any questions, please put them in the comments below. Tell me what you think. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and yeah, hit the subscribe button. If you have any interest at all, if you enjoy this channel, you can check out my other channel, which is thesolutionspodcast.com, or not .com, the Solutions Podcast. So go and check that out. I really appreciate it. We had a cool interview recently with somebody who's a defector from North Korea. Very interesting. And so yeah, check it out. And I will look forward to seeing you guys on the next video.